Good day, and welcome to part 2 of my Doctor Who DVD collection overview. And if you're wondering about this shelf, or this cabinet that I've got them in, I've actually had this for probably about 20 years. It's actually where I used to keep my Star Trek The Next Generation VHS collection. And now it's still, well, it's kind of holding together, encompassing my Doctor Who collection. So now we're down here. We're still working our way through Jon Pertwee. One of the many stories that many people would like to forget, The Time Monster. Followed by a classic, which, and yes, I know these are slightly out of order down here. I will endeavor to fix that. Day of the Daleks, another classic, and this is the one that was redone, where Nicholas Briggs from Big Finish and voice of the Daleks redid the horrible voices of the Daleks from the original version of this, which actually it's kind of cool seeing it done over again, but you've got both versions on there. So for nostalgia, I watched it with the original ones, and I just watched bits and pieces with Nick Briggs on there, but I think I will at some point watch the whole thing with the redone voices. So there we go, Day of the Daleks. And The Three Doctors. This kind of falls into the love it or hate it category. Multi-Doctor stories usually in some way or another kind of tend to disappoint because you can't give everyone equal coverage. But it was still, a pretty cool story and whatnot. This is also, I believe, one of the ones that's recently been re-released, if I'm not mistaken. This is obviously the original release from about 8 years ago. Then we have another one of the earliest Pertwee DVD releases, Carnival of Monsters, from 2003. This was never really particularly one of my favorites Pertwee stories. I know a lot of people like it, but yeah, I don't know. I think this was the second release of his in the range after Spearhead from Space. I might have picked something else for me, but no, whatever. Okay, and now we have another dual set. We have Dalek War. So here we have the concurrent stories, Frontier of Space, and Planet of the Daleks. So Daleks, whatever you want to call it. You can never quite get it right with the non-British accent, but whatever. So here we have Frontier in Space. And then we have Planet of the Daleks. This one I actually like these because the documentaries, they tried doing something a little different. It's like aliens in the future, or I guess it was humans in the future, looking back at society as viewed through the lens of Doctor Who during the time. So I don't know, it's probably one of my favorite documentaries. I like it when they try doing something original rather than just doing the basic, making of. So let's see if I can do this with one hand. Come on. Almost. Yay. Okay. And now if I can just get it back on the shelf. Almost. There we go. Okay. And here we have a work of early environmentalism. Doctor Who, The Green Death. Also one of the early releases, I think it was 05 that this came out in Region 1. It may have been 04 when it came out in Region 2. There's The Green Death, and the last episode to also feature Joe Grant. There we go. And then Pertwee's last season, which was probably the weakest. But it still wasn't that bad, and this is also where they begin the tunnel effect sequence and the introduction of Sarah Jane Smith, as played by Elizabeth Sladen. The Time Warrior, probably by far the best out of that season, or series. And then we follow that with perhaps one of the weakest. It's actually not a weak story, it's just that in the Invasion of the Dinosaurs, it's just kind of the effects of the dinosaurs just kind of ruin it. Usually, Doctor Who, you can forgive it for, weekend effects or whatnot, but this one was just kind of a little over the top in terms of sort of cheesiness. And then, Monster of Peladon, which is often considered to be a somewhat disappointing sequel to the original Curse of Peladon from Pertwee's earlier season. And then we have his Pertwee Swan Song, A Planet of Spiders, where he ends what at that point had been the longest tenure as Doctor Who. The first two Doctors, well, Hartnell did 3 seasons and 2 stories into the 4th season. Troughton did 3 seasons, and Pertwee done 5, so he was by far the longest running Doctor until he was replaced with Tom Baker. Robot. The only Tom Baker story that was done with the Pertwee production team, and often considered to be one of the classics. Actually, this was the beginning, or right after this, the Hinchcliffe and Holmes era, which is generally considered to be probably the best era or time of Doctor Who. And then this is another one of the earliest releases, released in Region 1 back in 2002, kind of a bare bones release, which they all were back then, The Ark in Space. And then we follow that with the 2-part, The Centauran Experiments, which I guess was their first, the first release in the range as to what they called a budget release, just a 2-episode story, but it's still not too bad. And they actually do give you a half-hour documentary, or I think it's around a half-hour with the Daleks. And then what I believe is actually probably still the highest-selling DVD in the Doctor Who range, Doctor Who, Genesis of the Daleks, considered, you know, one of the show's masterpieces. And you watch it over and over again, and it never gets tiresome. And then Revenge of the Cybermen, which was one of the very first episodes I ever watched, and one of my earliest memories of Doctor Who. So there we go. And this one's actually got probably one of my favorite documentaries on it, when it involves trying to find bootleg tapes of Doctor Who or taping it off TV, which, you know, taping the show off TV, and trying to track down every episode was something that, you know, I did in the 80s and early 90s and whatever. Anyways, that's Revenge of the Cybermen. And that's the end of part 2. So, very shortly, I will go on to part 3.